They landed in Jakarta at midnight, quiet, clinical, surgical. No weapons fired. No ships visible. Just towers collapsing like sandcastles, civilians screaming through choking dust, and something moving beneath the asphalt like bloodworms in a corpse. The skies didn't burn. The networks didn't blare invasion alarms. And Earth's allies? They said nothing. Not because they were late, but because they were watching. The Council had one law, one that held 1,000 systems together with trembling fingers and uneasy peace: don't invade Earth. No species, no matter how vast their fleets or cold their logic, dared test that line. Not after what humans did during the contact scorch. Not after Europa. Not after Vex. But the Karnoks broke it. And now, too late to run, too proud to beg, they would remember why humanity earned the title Death World Alpha. Somewhere beneath the Arctic ice, the last human war protocol clicked awake, and a voice rasped into the void. This time, we burn them first. The air above Jakarta didn't explode, it folded. The silence that came before was more violent than sound. People turned their heads toward the sky, only to find it missing. Where clouds should have hung, where the satellites blinked, there was only a yawning, unnatural ripple that hummed like a dying animal. Then came the collapse. No lasers. No dropships. No alien war drums. Just towers, roads, and bridges liquefying like wax under a black sun. Roads cracked open. Screams were swallowed whole. Something vast and unseen moved beneath the earth. Impossible geometry writhed under concrete like serpents chewing the world from the inside out. No one called it an invasion. Not at first. There was no message, no demand, no banner of war. And yet something had arrived. 7 minutes into the first event, the interspatial communications grid went dark. By the 10th minute, 5 global cities were gone. By the hour mark, the only thing left to light up the Pacific Rim was a single, flickering AI emergency beacon. Code locked to one name. 5,000 miles away, beneath the frozen crust of the Arctic wastes, something groaned. A structure like a rusted ribcage shivered in the cold. Steel bent. Old reactors coughed heat. An AI core shook off 4 decades of frost and whispered, "Wake up, you miserable bastard!" The cryopod hissed open. Colonel Gareth Vex didn't gasp, didn't scream, didn't shake. He exhaled once, a dry, mechanical grunt, and pried himself free from the carbon sheath as if climbing out of a coffin he'd gotten used to. His cybernetic right arm crackled with static. Ice peeled from the seams of his spine-mounted neural array. His eyes adjusted to the flickering green of emergency lights and then narrowed at the voice booming through the bunker. "You were supposed to stay frozen until the end of Earth or the end of diplomacy. Guess what broke first?" Vex didn't answer. He just walked, naked, steam rising off his skin, straight to the console and punched a command into it with a fist loud enough to dent the interface. "Scab," he growled. "Status." The AI chuckled. It wasn't a pleasant sound. More like the smirk of a sociopath wired into a toaster. "Jakarta is a crater. New Nairobi's offline." Geneva screamed once before silence. "Global surveillance shows seismic anomalies. No visuals. No enemy profile. No weapon signature. Stealth invasion? Stealth something. No fleets. No transmissions. Just burrowing. Deep. Smart. Coordinated. Council refuses to classify it." Vex's lips curled into a sneer. "Because if they do, they have to respond." "Correct. And their law says no species is allowed to invade Earth." "Then someone broke the only damn rule keeping this rock alive." A cracked mirror reflected Vex's face, aged, scarred, iron-bearded, with eyes like scorched metal. He looked exactly like what he was, the last fail-safe Earth never wanted to use again. The man who broke Titan's moons in half with orbital rods. The man who shut down Europa with a virus made of dream code. The man who got exiled by the same people he saved. And now, the man Earth was calling back. He suited up. The armor wasn't shiny or ceremonial. It was dented from a dozen forgotten wars, patched with old flag insignias, and humming with barely contained nuclear gel. His rail cannon arm snapped into place with a growl of magnetic locks. A spine-fed plasma blade slid into his backsheath. The HUD in his left eye flickered awake, scanning the map. Cradle Node 6, Vex muttered. Orbital uplink still intact? Barely. Reinforced during the Martian exodus. Everything else is dust. I'll need a launch rail. You're coming with. Of course I am. Who else is going to make fun of your flying? Patch into my cortex. Full combat AI sync. No firewalls. Scab paused. You serious? Full integration? We've got maybe 12 hours before they finish whatever they started. I want your paranoia wired into my decisions. Oh, Gareth. You always knew how to make a machine feel wanted. The floor opened beneath him. Maglev boots clicked. The drop tunnel roared. And just like that, the last weapon of old Earth shot toward the surface like a bullet made of bad memories. The sky above the bunker was black, not with night, but with particulate smoke and something worse, absence. Where stars should have been, there was only pulsing void. Vex stood alone in a jagged canyon of ice that once held glaciers. Now it held nothing. Not even snow. As he stalked toward the extraction beacon, two things happened at once. His comms intercepted a council diplomatic packet, and a flesh pillar erupted from the ground 10 meters ahead. The message from the council said, "We are aware of the planetary anomalies. Investigations are underway. Until confirmed aggression occurs, we advise containment. Do not escalate. Do not respond independently." The creature that crawled from the earth didn't care for diplomacy. It stood 12 feet tall, plated in shifting bone, eyeless, and twitching. Its body pulsated like a breathing ulcer. It screamed not with a mouth, but with a wet, psychic pressure that made nearby birds explode mid-flight. Vex grinned. Now that's a confirmed escalation. He fired. The rail cannon launched a compressed slug of anti-armor tungsten through the creature's chest, pinning it to a ridge in a shower of gore and ice. It kept moving. So he shot again. And again. Until it stopped trying to grow a new torso. Behind him, Scab muttered, "That wasn't a scout. That was an anchor." Vex stepped over the corpse, eyes locked on the bloody crater behind it. Inside, the hole shimmered with heat and movement, things crawling just beyond reach. "They're digging up from deep," he said. "Planetary inversion. Like termites. No ships because they came under us. And no one sees it coming until the core collapses. Then we cut them out before that happens." He keyed his personal override into the beacon. A whine of turbines shrieked overhead. The last remaining Falcon-class stealth carrier, Neverender, uncloaked long enough for a tether to fire down. He clipped in. The carrier pulled him up like a shot, disappearing into the clouds before the next anchor could scream. Inside the cockpit, Vex didn't sit. He stood over the helm, watching Earth vanish beneath smoke and distortion. "I want a list of every surviving orbital asset, every deep bunker with AI-compatible interfaces, and anyone left who still answers to the Bastion codes." "You planning a response team?" Scab asked. "No," Vex growled. "I'm planning a message." "Wording?" He turned to the nearest camera, blood-stained, armored, and already strategizing a campaign of planetary counterinsurgency without even knowing the enemy's name. Vex smirked, lips curled in that old dead way. "Broadcast this to the Council. Plain frequency. No encryption." The AI pinged readiness. Then Vex said it. "You told them not to invade Earth. They didn't listen. Now you're all going to learn why that law was written in our blood." The sky above Cradle Node 6 wasn't a sky anymore. It was a bleeding wound, auroras bent sideways streaked with red static, and the stars had started moving. Not orbits. Not ships. Something else. Something watching. Vex stood at the edge of the hull bay, wind howling through the broken shield vents of the Neverender. He adjusted his grip on the magnetic sling cannon, fingers tapping the cold steel like a metronome. He wasn't nervous. He was counting seconds, Because the Karnoks hadn't shown themselves yet, and that meant they were planning something worse than a fight. Scab's voice crackled over internal comms. Node 6 is still active, but just barely. Half the orbital array's dark. Something's feeding false positive status to the Council. Who's in charge down there? No one. Last known commander bled out trying to eject a data spike. You've got a bunch of greenhorns and a retired comms officer who tried to send a flare coded in Shakespeare. Desperate or stupid? Probably both. Want me to jam their uplink? No. Let them transmit. I want every alien ear tuned into this. The drop was clean. Controlled. The Neverender ran silent as it cut low across the upper atmosphere, ejecting Vex like a bullet toward the whole spine of Node 6. The man didn't fall, he descended, guided by thruster flares, limbs adjusting like he'd done it in 100 other wars, which he had. The landing cratered the metal. His boots hissed with thermal pressure. The cannon mounted to his arm snapped forward, scanning for heat signatures. They were already waiting. A Karnok's husk stepped from behind a coolant tower, spine bristling with resinous blades. It didn't roar. It clicked, a sound like wet bone and stone cracking. Then 3 more followed. Vex fired the sling cannon once, aiming for the ground, not the enemy. The impact shattered a coolant line and sent a jet of cryo-steam into the air. The Karnoks vanished inside it, too late to notice the proximity charges tumbling at their feet. The blast was thunder without flame. Pieces of the invaders slapped wet against the deck. One managed to crawl half a meter before Vex stomped its skull into powder. He didn't speak to it. He didn't need to. The doors to central control opened to reveal chaos. The survivors inside weren't soldiers. They were technicians with half-melted data pads, bleeding from the ears and duct-taping coolant valves shut. They flinched when Vex walked in, until his voice broke the air like gravel in a turbine. Which of you idiots speaks an iambic pentameter? A balding man with a stained uniform stepped forward. That would be me. You still alive? Barely. Good. You're promoted. Patch me into the lattice. But the Council is full of cowards. They'll get the message after the shooting stops. He dropped a spiked drive onto the command console. The interface rejected it, until his biometrics overrode the station's hierarchy. Suddenly, the old war protocols came alive. Old ones? Before peace. Before treaties. The lights turned red. The hum turned into a growl. Welcome back, Colonel Vex, the system said in a sterile female voice. Initiate bastion clearance? Yes, he said, eyes glowing under the HUD. Unlock everything. Node 6 came alive like a creature unshackled from sleep. Weapon arrays unfolded. Satellite plates rotated back to facing Earth. Hidden turrets hissed as targeting software booted from cold storage. From low orbit, the rest of the station's spine extended, and aimed straight at the crust below Jakarta. Colonel, Scab said, there's movement near the core. I think they're trying to anchor their hive in the mantle. You know what that means. They're not just digging. They're seeding Earth. Yeah. You let this finish, and we're just another biomass farm. Vex looked out the fractured viewport. What used to be Southeast Asia now glowed faintly red under the clouds. Not fire. Not lava. Something breathing. Bring me visual. Scab linked the geospine lens into his HUD. The surface peeled away in simulation, and there it was, something pulsing beneath the crust. A structure like a cancerous cathedral, shaped from bone and nerve fiber, nested inside the planet's heat. Vex ran the targeting interface. Tell me we still have one clean shot. Single core lance available. Fusion warhead degraded, but it'll rupture a sync line. Drop it. Now. Sir, that's going to destabilize the entire. Drop it, Scab. The confirmation pinged once. A hatch opened in the belly of Node 6. The warhead, ancient, dusty, weeping coolant, fell silently toward Earth. 3 seconds later, the crust of the Indonesian archipelago lifted 6 meters into the air and shattered in a rain of black blood and molten stone. The hive exploded from inside, writhing tendrils vaporized in shockwave and heat. What came out next wasn't a scream. It was a signal. Something from the hive's core sent a pulse outward, something aware. Not a reaction. Not an alarm. A message. Vex caught it before it ended. It wasn't meant for Earth. It was aimed outward, toward the stars. "They're calling back up," Scab said, voice tight. "They can scream all they want. We just taught them what defiance looks like. You realize they won't stop. I'm counting on it." Below the station, Earth quaked. The second wave was already stirring, hatchlings born from the ruined hive, pushing to the surface through tunnels carved in flesh and fire. Cities would fall within the day. But now the world knew what it was up against. The technicians in control looked at Vex like he was a legend made flesh. One of them whispered, "We thought the law would protect us." "It never did," Vex growled. "It was a leash. One they thought we were dumb enough to keep wearing. But the council, they're not coming. Then who do we have?" Vex turned, armor stained in black ichor, eyes burning. "You've got me." The station's orbital cannons rotated back toward Earth, this time locking on seismic breach points detected in Europe and South America. "Broadcast a message on every human frequency," he ordered. "What do we say? Tell them we're not waiting for orders. We're not hoping for diplomacy. We're not asking for survival. We're taking it. This isn't a war. It's a purge." He watched as flames swallowed half the Earth's edge on the map. Then he smiled. "And someone tell those bastards in the council." The technician leaned in, breath held. "Next time they write a law, they'd better pray we don't come looking for the pen." The underground facility in Oslo had once been a refugee shelter during the Solar Wars. Now, it was a graveyard of silence and scorched bones. The smell wasn't decay, it was sterilization. Something had tried to erase everything human from the space. The walls were clean, too clean, bleached of soot and blood, like someone wanted to pretend no one ever died here. Colonel Gareth Vex stood at the entrance, rail cannons slung low, eyes scanning the readout Scab fed into his neural HUD. Every heat signature they tracked vanished the moment they crossed the outer seal. Life signs 0. Noise 0. Motion 0. And still, he felt watched. The corridors echoed his steps like whispers in a tomb. Lights flickered in erratic patterns, not because of damage, but because something had reprogrammed them. The pattern wasn't random. It pulsed. A rhythm. A message. He paused under one of the light panels. "Scab. Translate this." The AI paused. "It's not language. It's mimicry. They're imitating human stress signals. Pulse and breath patterns. They're trying to fake fear? No. They're learning it." The door at the end of the corridor creaked open on its own. Vex didn't raise his weapon. He walked through slowly. Aggression was easy. But control? Control scared them more. Inside was a command chamber. Or it had been. Now it looked like someone had tried to copy it from memory. Desks at strange angles. Consoles partially grown from a fleshy resin. Holographic projectors flickering footage that had never been recorded. Vex watched himself on one, standing over a council envoy on Ganymede a decade ago. The envoy's throat cut open. That footage had been wiped. Except someone had kept it. "Who the hell is watching my nightmares?" Vex muttered. Then something moved. Not in shadows. In reflection. A human figure stood in the corner, back turned, arms limp. Uniform intact. Skin pale, veined. "Identify yourself," Vex said, voice flat. The figure turned slowly. The face that looked back was his own. Not a clone. A mockery. The proportions were wrong. The eyes blinked asynchronously. The smile was wide, too wide, stretched by skin not meant to flex that way. It spoke in his voice. "Gareth Vex. Earth's last predator." He didn't flinch. "Cute. You read my file or just eat it. You were supposed to be extinct. Instead, you evolve. You adapt. You counter. You're a virus without a host, pure war wrapped in flesh. You sound jealous. We studied your wars, your betrayals, your vengeance. And we realized Earth was never sacred. It was just unusable. Because your kind doesn't surrender. And now you're here to fix that. No. We're here to replace it. The mimic dropped its illusion. The body unraveled like wet silk, revealing the thing beneath. Its torso split down the center, exposing a hollow cavity filled with twitching nerve tendrils and glowing gland sacs. It didn't lunge. It broadcast. And the base answered. Walls split open. Dozens of shapes crawled out, humanoid, semi-formed, still changing, still growing. Some had faces. Familiar ones. Dead officers. Disgraced diplomats. Friends Vex buried years ago. He didn't hesitate. The rail cannon screamed. The first 5 were ash before they touched the floor. He spun, shifted, slammed a pulse grenade into a wall conduit, and turned the whole room into an EMP furnace. Sparks cascaded. Mimics twitched mid-step and dropped like puppets with cut strings. But the original mimic, the one wearing him, still stood. You can't kill yourself, it said. Watch me. He drew the blade from his back sheath and hurled it. Not aimed at the mimic's chest, but at the base's internal reactor lining behind it. The blade detonated mid-flight, igniting a chain reaction through the biotissue infesting the walls. The room turned into a storm of shrieking metal and burning nerve. As he sprinted toward the exit, Scab yelled in his skull. That thing was reading your memories, Gareth. You've been compromised. Let them read. I've got more nightmares than they've got neurons. They weren't attacking, they were copying. Learning. They've been watching for years. Embedded in power grids. Government cores. Neural archives. Then Earth was never just invaded. It's been infected. He reached the surface as the base imploded behind him. Smoke rose in pillars. The snows turned black again. He stood at the ridge and stared toward the nearest city, Oslo. At first glance, it looked normal. Lights on. Drones in the sky. But now he knew what he was looking for. The wrong shadows. The wrong rhythms. The wrong people. They were there, already. Replacements. This isn't just war, he muttered. No. It's subjugation by substitution. Vex looked up. They want Earth? Then they get it. All of it. Unfiltered. Unrelenting. He activated the emergency override embedded in his neural jack. It wasn't meant to be used by humans anymore, just a relic from a war the Council buried. But Vex wasn't the Council. He was Earth's ghost. A quantum burst hit the stratosphere, bouncing off half-dead satellites and forgotten relays. It reached deep into Earth's ancient bunkers and black sites, triggering old names and old monsters. Within minutes, 6 old-world factions reactivated. The Marauders of Mars. The Orbital Exodus Brigades. The Bonewire Cult. Units banned from existence and buried under treaties now turned their heads toward the call. You just woke every outlawed warlord on the planet, Scab warned. Good, Vex said. They were always the ones who understood the difference between survival and surrender. From the clouds above, a low hum began, a new sound, wrong and heavy. Scab ran the spectrum. That's not from Earth. They're coming? Not Karnoks. Council ships. And not to help. They want to contain this before we expose it. Yeah. And you just lit a flare they can't ignore. Vex smiled as thunder cracked across the skyline. Let them come. Let everyone come. I'm done waiting for permission to fight. He turned, raised his cannon to the sky, and shouted over the rising wind. You wanted a clean world? You picked the wrong species. The sky over Berlin cracked like porcelain under artillery thunder. Council ships dropped from orbit, sleek and cold, their hulls pulsing with clean white light and interstellar authority. They didn't land. They hovered, silent, watching, like judges awaiting a verdict they already planned to enforce. Gareth Vex stood atop a shattered skyscraper, scorched trench coat flapping in the fallout wind, one boot planted on a Karnak's carcass that still twitched with dying nerves. His rail cannon smoked at the muzzle. Blood, both red and green, slicked his armor like war paint. Scab's voice buzzed in his neural jack. Council fleet just established a no-fly perimeter over 9 continents. Broadcasting peace enforcement mandates. Peace through orbital blockade. Vex muttered. Classic. They're not engaging the Karnak's hives. Because the Karnaks aren't their target. A transmission broke through, clean and condescending. This is High Speaker Velan of the Council of 12. Earth has violated interstellar protocol by escalating warfare beyond quarantine thresholds. Immediate cessation of conflict is required. Surrender military assets for inspection. Comply or be cleansed. Vex snorted. Cleanse this. He fired a spike beam through the signal tower, interrupting the broadcast mid-threat. The tower shattered in a flash of plasma and ash. Moments later, orbital rounds rained down, reducing 10 blocks of empty Berlin to glass. The Council didn't need Earth to comply. They just needed Earth to bleed. The city turned into a 3-way kill zone, Karnaks crawling from beneath, humans fighting from rubble, and Council drones vaporizing anything not broadcasting passive surrender tags. It was perfect. Vex grinned through grit teeth. All right. They want a show? Let's give them a season finale. He slammed a transmitter core into the ground, coated in black site encryption from the old solar uprising. A beat later, half a dozen satellite-killed factions blinked to life across the Earth grid. Exiled warlords. Rogue AI enclaves. Orbital pirates. Old enemies of the world government who, for once, had a shared interest. Screw the Council. A plasma detonation turned the eastern skyline into a molten waterfall. Karnak's war queens slithered through sewers and cracked highways, hurling acid spores at anything alive. Humans fought back with scavenged rail guns and jury-rigged railcars loaded with high explosives. Whole city districts became traps. But the real miracle wasn't the chaos. It was the coordination. Vex didn't lead armies. He led rage. Every message he broadcast was pure venom, slicing through fear and replacing it with fury. They said Earth was unfit for war. That we were too volatile to trust. You know what that means? They were right. And that's why we win. Drone carriers from the Mars syndicates opened fire from the upper thermosphere, cracking Council cruisers with stolen phase torpedoes. Under the oceans, old pre-Council submarines launched missile salvos into deep Earth Karnak's hives. And above, in orbit, Vex had another plan. He entered a launch elevator buried beneath the bones of Frankfurt, escorted by former penal legionnaires now loyal only to the Bastion Code. One of them saluted him with a bloody handprint across her visor. You really think we can take orbit? Vex didn't blink. Not take it. Rip it out of their cold, alien hands. The elevator shot upward, encased in a reinforced tungsten pod. 10,000 meters. 20. The Earth curved away, a scarred globe covered in fires and storms. Then he broke atmosphere. Above him, the old satellite known as Warden Black flickered to life. It wasn't Council-made. It wasn't even officially real. But it held a solar harvester array so powerful it had been mothballed to prevent misuse. Today, Vex defined use his own way. Scab linked him in. You've got one pulse. One strike. After that, the array'll melt from feedback. One's enough. He locked coordinates. Not on the Karnaks. Not on a hive. But on the Council flagship, currently parked over the Atlantic with its weapons offline, trusting in invulnerability. Vex smiled like a wolf in winter. Let's see how you like Earthlight. The array fired. The beam was not color. It was absence. A lance of compressed radiation hotter than the sun's core and as wide as a canyon. It sliced through the Council vessel like a sword through foam. The explosion could be seen from the Himalayas. 3 more Council ships scrambled. One tried to cloak. Vex launched himself from the satellite, riding the debris field like a meteor, spearheading into their defensive screen with nothing but a kinetic bombardment suit and a backpack nuke arm to scream. He struck the second ship mid-turn, detonated the warhead in their hangar bay, and lived. Barely. Armor gone. Suit cracked. Bones fused with nan-bond wrap. But he stood, breathing blood through his teeth, on the ruptured hull of a crippled alien warship, staring through cracked glass at what remained of the bridge crew. One of them reached for a calm. Vex raised his scorched hand. No more talking. The last of them died without understanding what hit them. Back on Earth, the signal lit every human frequency. Council vessels are no longer a threat. Tactical orbital supremacy achieved. Earth command transferring back to native control. Ragged soldiers in trenches screamed. Children in bunkers wept and laughed. And in a scorched refugee center in Sao Paulo, a woman with one arm lifted her daughter and said, "The bastard of Titan's still alive!" Vex's broken body was recovered by old allies, biohackers from Io, running mobile organ printers and black market neural clinics. They carried him like a relic, not a man. Scabs stayed linked to his cortex. "You realize what you just did?" Vex coughed out smoke. "Yeah. You didn't just start a war. You turned Earth into a revolution factory. Then we'd better make good product." The final Karnax Queen screamed into the void. And the void screamed back.